Nobody expected Jasmine Crockett to show up like a hurricane dressed in silk. But that's exactly what happened the moment she stepped into the studio. Heels clicking, curls bouncing, and a look in her eyes that warned anyone with a lick of sense. Don't start none, won't be none. The set was already buzzing when she walked in. Producers were scrambling like headless chickens, interns whispering like children caught stealing candy. At the main table, Karoline Leavitt sat stiff as a yardstick, pretending to flip through her notes, though everyone could tell she wasn't reading a damn word. Her hands were too tight around that pen, like she wanted to snap it in half. And why wouldn't she? She knew the second she heard Jasmine's name on the guest list that tonight wasn't going to be her fairy tale prom night with Donald Trump smiling from the audience. No, tonight was going to be a full-blown public execution, and Karoline, bless her frazzled little heart, was sitting front row. Quick question before we get too deep. When you see someone standing strong for truth while someone else crumbles trying to defend a lie, who do you respect more? The one who speaks truth no matter what, or the one who crumbles but still clings to their fake loyalty? Tell me in the comments. Real talk only. Jasmine didn't bother hiding her disgust. She took her seat, flashing that quick professional smile that said, "I'm here to work, not play." Meanwhile, Karoline threw glances like daggers, but they bounced right off Jasmine's armor. See, when you've gone a few rounds fighting actual racism and political stupidity with your bare hands, a junior loudmouth like Karoline barely scratches the paint. Across the room, the cameras were lining up. Microphones checked. Red lights blinking. A countdown started. 5, 4, 3. Jasmine adjusted her mic cool as ice. Karoline swallowed hard, praying nobody noticed how her knees bounced under the desk. 2, 1. The host, a well-dressed man who already looked like he regretted showing up today, welcomed everyone to the special segment. Smiles all around, but fake ones. You could practically smell the sweat behind the foundation. And then the topic was thrown on the table like a live grenade. Donald Trump, his latest outburst, his endless pit of scandals, his flock of spineless defenders. You could hear a pin drop for half a second, and then Jasmine leaned forward, adjusted her earring like a queen fixing her crown, and without waiting for anyone's permission, fired the first shot that shook the room so hard it rattled the cameras. That's where it all started, the point of no return. And before the hour was up, Karoline Leavitt would be the one clutching her pearls, gasping for air, while Jasmine Crockett, and every Democrat with a working brain, would be standing tall, watching the wreckage without shedding a single tear. Because this wasn't just another debate. This was a reckoning. And Jasmine wasn't here to whisper it. She came to roar. The second the cameras blinked to life, the mood on set shifted like a cold front sweeping through a summer barbecue. Jasmine sat there, still and steady, like a seasoned heavyweight just waiting for the bell. She wasn't fidgeting. She wasn't nervously adjusting her mic. She wasn't forcing a smile. She just was unbothered, unmoved. Meanwhile, Karoline Leavitt was falling apart without even saying a word. Under the polished surface, Karoline was a volcano in high heels. Her smile stretched too wide, teeth clenched too tight. She kept scribbling notes she wasn't going to use, flipping pages she didn't even glance at, pretending not to notice that every time she looked up, Jasmine was already looking dead at her. Not blinking, not flinching. Like a lion watching a goat figure out it wandered into the wrong part of the jungle. The host kept rambling through his opening lines, but nobody was really listening. You could feel it. The real show was sitting right there at the table, brewing like a thunderstorm with no intention of passing quietly. Karoline glanced sideways at her producer, who gave her a tight nod. A useless little gesture that was supposed to mean you got this. She didn't. Not tonight, because across from her, Jasmine was just warming up. She crossed one leg over the other, a little smile playing at the corner of her mouth, like she already knew how the night would end. Not with a handshake, not with a polite disagreement. No, with Karoline's career wheezing on life support while the nation watched and cheered. The topic sheet sat in front of them. Big bold letters at the top. Donald Trump, patriot or problem? You could almost hear Karoline's soul leave her body when she saw it. Everyone knew she couldn't say two sentences without mentioning Trump like he was her firstborn son. She was stuck. She couldn't criticize him without losing her base, but defending him tonight against Jasmine Crockett of all people was like trying to hold back a freight train with a paper towel. The producers kept the cameras wide, catching every little flicker of panic in Karoline's eyes. Viewers at home could see it too. They weren't stupid. They could tell when someone was standing on shaky ground. And Karoline? She was practically buried up to her neck already. A producer's voice buzzed in everyone's ear through the earpiece. Stand by. First question to Karoline. You could almost hear the collective sucking in of breath across the room. This wasn't a conversation. This was a slow, televised slaughter. And Karoline had been handed the dullest butter knife to defend herself. She leaned forward, fake confident, fingers tapping the desk. She had her talking points. She had rehearsed them. But what Karoline didn't have, what she never had, was the guts to go head-to-head with someone like Jasmine, who spoke from her chest and carried truth like a weapon strapped to her side. The countdown clock on the screen flashed again. The question flew out. Simple, sharp, meant to start a little fire. Karoline, given the recent scandals surrounding Donald Trump, do you still believe he represents the best of American leadership? The room went silent. Even the audience shifted forward in their chairs, waiting, watching. Karoline opened her mouth. A cam line tumbled out. Something about patriotism, greatness, loyalty. It was like throwing a spark into a room already soaked in gasoline. Jasmine didn't move yet. She let Karoline talk. Let her dig the hole deeper. Let her pile lie on top of lie, like a kid building a house of cards in the middle of a hurricane. And just when Karoline thought she had found her rhythm, when she smirked a little like she had survived the first wave, Jasmine leaned forward, tilted her head slightly, and smiled. Not a friendly smile. Not a good debate smile. A smile that said, "You just lit the match. Now watch it burn." Karoline had barely finished polishing up her last line, some tired defense about American values, when Jasmine sat forward, rested both elbows on the table, and leveled her full weight straight into the center of the room. There was no warning, no polite pivot, no fake little laugh to ease the blow. Jasmine Crockett just opened her mouth and let the fire pour out. "You want to talk about values, Karoline?" she said, her voice steady, slicing through the air like a sharp knife through cheap plastic. "Since when did values mean cheering for a man who lies like he breathes? Since when did loving your country mean licking the boots of someone who tried to tear it apart?" Karoline blinked. Hard. Once. Twice. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Like her brain was flipping through empty flashcards. Jasmine didn't stop. She didn't even slow down. "You sit up here talking about loyalty like it's a badge. It's not loyalty, it's delusion. You know it. We all know it. You just pray the folks watching at home are too tired or too scared to call out." The audience, small as it was in the studio, had gone dead quiet. Even the camera guys froze, half scared that if they moved, Jasmine might turn the fire hose on them next. You defend a man who mocks disabled people, trashes veterans, kisses up to dictators like it's a Sunday service. And you want us to take lessons from you on patriotism. Jasmine's voice tightened now, still calm, but cold enough to frost the walls. "Girl, save it. We're not that stupid." Karoline finally managed a sound, a short, strangled gasp, like a balloon deflating in slow motion. She shifted in her seat, searching for her talking points like a drowning woman reaching for a life raft. But there was nothing to grab. Not anymore. Jasmine leaned even closer across the table. She wasn't yelling. She didn't need to. Real truth never has to raise its voice. It just sits there, heavy and undeniable. Donald Trump isn't a patriot. He's a professional con artist who tricked people into selling their souls for a red hat and a tax break. "And you're still out here passing around the Kool-Aid like it's communion wine," she said, one eyebrow lifting in a mix of pity and pure disgust. The host, bless his nervous little heart, tried to jump in. He cleared his throat and mumbled something about moving on, but Jasmine wasn't done yet. Not even close. "You know what's worse than a grifter?" she asked, turning briefly toward the host without taking her eyes off Karoline. "A grifter's cheerleader. Someone who knows the whole house is on fire and still hands out matches. Karoline pressed her lips together, her knuckles whitening around her pen. For a second, it looked like she might explode, but she didn't. She just sat there, silent, frozen, humiliated, while Jasmine finished slicing what little was left of her dignity into tiny, glittering pieces. Jasmine sat back finally, brushing an invisible speck of dust off her jacket sleeve like she had just taken out the trash. No gloating, no victory lap, just a look that said, "Next time you come to the grown folks table, bring more than slogans and fairy tales." The host, desperate to rescue the moment, stumbled into a new question, but the damage was done. The audience at home had already seen what they needed to see. Jasmine Crockett, unbothered, undefeated, undeniable. Karoline Leavitt, exposed, emptied, and clinging to whatever scraps she could find. The set felt colder now, tighter, like the walls had moved in an inch or two. Karoline shifted in her seat again, her chest rising faster, her hands fumbling with her papers. Because deep down, she knew. Everybody knew. The collapse wasn't far away now. If you're cheering for truth and not clinging to broken lies like Karoline's crew, hit that subscribe button right now. And if you're hesitating, maybe it's because deep down, you're still rooting for the ones who fall apart when the truth shows up. Don't be that person. Like, comment, and tell us where you're watching from. Real ones speak up. We have a target to hit 50 subscribers before the end of April, and you can make this happen for us. Please subscribe. Karoline tried to steady herself, but her hands were already betraying her. The pen she'd been squeezing like a lifeline slipped from her fingers and clattered loudly on the table. The noise, small as it was, cracked the air like a gunshot. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Even Jasmine just sat back, watching, arms folded, eyebrows raised slightly like a teacher waiting for a failing student to realize the test was already over. Karoline forced a smile that looked more like a grimace, bent down to pick up her pen, and dropped it again. Her cheeks flushed an ugly shade of red that no amount of studio makeup could hide. The host shuffled his papers uselessly, pretending not to notice the slow, humiliating collapse happening in front of him. The next question came, tossed like a frisbee across the table, trying to shift the mood. But Karoline wasn't ready. Not even close. She opened her mouth. Nothing came out at first but a shaky breath. She tried again, this time forcing words into the air like a child pushing broken toys across a floor. "Well, I think that, loyalty is," she stuttered, her voice thinner now, breaking at the edges like wet paper. It wasn't a sentence. It wasn't even an argument. It was a slow-motion collapse in front of millions. Jasmine didn't even need to interrupt. The silence hanging after Karoline's half-baked sentence was louder than any comeback Jasmine could have fired. It was brutal. It was beautiful. The camera, heartless and sharp, zoomed in just enough to catch the sweat beading at Karoline's hairline. Her eye makeup, meant to make her look fierce and bold, now framed her face like war paint on a soldier who never made it past the first shot. The host, now visibly panicking, leaned forward, fake chuckling into the awkwardness. "Maybe we can hear Jasmine's thoughts while you, gather yours, Karoline." Translation: "Please, for the love of everything holy, let's get the train back on the tracks before she bursts into flames." But Jasmine wasn't there to throw lifelines. She was there to cut through the nonsense with a scalpel. Jasmine leaned in her mic slowly, keeping her voice smooth as silk. "Sure," she said, her tone dripping with the kind of casual dominance that didn't need to be announced. "I mean, if we're giving folks time to figure out which talking point fits today's mess, I got time." A soft, stunned laugh rippled through the few people in the studio who still had enough self-control not to openly cheer. Karoline flinched. It wasn't just the words. It was the way Jasmine said them. Calm, certain, like she wasn't even breaking a sweat while Karoline was drowning in her own flop sweat. Karoline grabbed her water bottle, fumbling with the cap like it was made of butter. She took a gulp so fast she choked, coughing into the mic for everyone at home to hear. Another wince from the producer's booth. Another dagger in what little dignity she had left. And Jasmine? She just sat back, watching, letting Karoline unravel herself inch by painful inch without lifting a single finger. If Karoline had any sense left, she would have tapped out, thrown up a white flag, claimed a fake migraine, anything to escape the slow public dismantling happening on live television. But she didn't, because pride is a hell of a drug. And tonight, Karoline was overdosing in front of everybody. The next question barely registered. Something about ethics. Something about leadership. Karoline answered, sort of a jumbled salad of words, buzz phrases, and hollow patriotism that didn't land anywhere close to convincing. It wasn't an argument anymore. It was a sad, sputtering mess. The political version of a car trying to start with a dead battery. The cameras caught it all. The empty eyes, the trembling hands, the slight wobble in her seat as she realized she was losing not just the debate, but whatever scraps of credibility she came in with. The collapse wasn't loud. It wasn't a dramatic fainting spell or a screaming match. It was quieter than that, more brutal because of it. Karoline Leavitt was sinking under her own weight, and Jasmine Crockett wasn't even breaking a nail watching her fall. And the night wasn't over yet. Karoline had been hanging by a thread. Everybody could see it. The way she kept blinking faster, the way her hand shook every time she reached for her water, the way her breathing started sounding louder than the host's questions. Even the poor guy running the teleprompter was holding his breath, ready to cut to commercial at the first real sign of trouble. And then it happened. 1 minute, Karoline was nodding along, pretending to listen to a softball question thrown her way, something she probably could have answered half asleep. The next minute, her eyelids fluttered like a broken screen door in a hurricane. She swayed once, twice. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Then, right there on live national television, Karoline Leavitt collapsed like a cheap folding chair under a heavyweight boxer. It wasn't graceful. It wasn't quiet. It wasn't the kind of thing you could brush off with a quick joke about low blood sugar. Karoline's body slammed sideways against the desk, rattling the microphones. Her chair screeched back like it was trying to escape the mess. For a full second, it looked like she might catch herself. But no, her knees gave out completely, and she hit the ground with a thud that echoed around the studio. The gasp from the audience wasn't polite. It was raw and loud, the kind of sound people make when they see a car wreck happening right in front of them. The host jumped up so fast he almost knocked over his chair. Staffers rushed in from the sidelines, tripping over each other like they were auditioning for a Three Stooges reboot. Someone yelled for a medic. Someone else shouted to cut to commercial. But the director, bless his messy little soul, froze for a few priceless seconds, letting the cameras keep rolling while America got a front row seat to Karoline's full political meltdown. And through it all, Jasmine Crockett didn't move an inch. She just sat there, calm, composed, watching the chaos unfold like she'd seen this show 1,000 times before and already knew how it ended. When a studio finally cut the feed, flashing a clumsy, technical difficulties message across the screen, it was already too late. The damage was done. Clips were racing across social media faster than wildfire. Hashtag Karoline Collapse started trending within minutes. The memes hit even faster. Karoline's fainting spell photoshopped into movie posters, sports highlights, even those old fainting goat videos. Backstage was pure disaster. Producers barked orders nobody was following. Assistants shoved bottled water and tissues into anyone's hands who looked important. Karoline was propped up in a chair now, head between her knees, her hair a sweaty mess, her lipstick smeared halfway down her chin. Her team crowded around her, speaking in hushed, panicked voices. Say it was dehydration. Blame it on a skipped meal. Maybe a bad reaction to makeup. They threw out excuses like confetti, desperately trying to patch together a story that wouldn't look like the flaming wreck it was. Meanwhile, Jasmine stood off to the side, casually chatting with a makeup artist like none of it fazed her. And why would it? She didn't raise her voice. She didn't hurl insults. She just told the truth so plain and sharp that Karoline's whole body gave up trying to hold the lie together. The real kicker came when someone from Karoline's camp tried to spin the narrative to a few reporters waiting outside the building. They claimed it was exhaustion from a busy schedule. Jasmine, overhearing, couldn't help herself. She leaned over to a nearby journalist, flashing that sly, killer smile, and said just loud enough to be heard, "Funny, I had the same schedule. I'm still standing." The reporter's grin said everything. The story was locked in. Karoline wasn't going to walk this one off. She was going to wear it forever. And Jasmine, she wasn't just standing. She was towering. The second they cut to commercial, the backstage area exploded into chaos. It looked like someone had kicked a beehive wearing a Trump 2024 hat. Producers were shouting into headsets, barking orders that nobody was following. Assistants sprinted across the floor, carrying clipboards, bottled water, tissues, makeup kits, anything they thought might patch up the disaster bleeding out on live television. Karoline's team huddled around her like panicked villagers trying to put out a house fire with paper fans. Karoline herself sat slumped in a green room chair, face ghostly pale. A cold compress slapped her forehead by some poor intern who looked 2 seconds away from crying. Her campaign manager, a sweaty man who looked like he ate stress for breakfast, hovered nearby, shoving his phone into her line of sight. "Smile. You're fine. Tweet that you're fine. Now," he hissed through clenched teeth, practically jabbing the phone against her limp fingers. Karoline blinked slowly, like it took effort just to stay upright. One hand fumbled across the screen. A tweet went out. "Feeling much better. Thank you for the prayers and support. Just a little dehydration. Hashtag grateful, hashtag onward." Nobody bought it. Not the staff. Not the viewers. Not even Karoline, judging by the dead look in her eyes. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett stood about 15 feet away, casually sipping a bottle of water like she was waiting for an Uber. A few producers whispered nervously, unsure if they should apologize to her, thank her for the ratings spike, or offer her a job. Jasmine caught a glimpse of Karoline's disaster team fluttering around like pigeons and smirked. She didn't need to say a word. The whole scene said it for her. You played stupid games. You won stupid prizes. One junior staffer tried to salvage what was left of the night's broadcast plan. He cornered Jasmine with a shaky clipboard and a suggestion so ridiculous even he looked embarrassed. Miss Crockett, if you'd be willing to maybe soften your closing remarks for balance," he stammered. Jasmine stared at him like he'd asked her to apologize for breathing. She didn't yell, didn't roll her eyes. She just gave him a slow, polite smile, the kind you give a kid who tells you the earth is flat, and said, "I'll speak the truth. If that feels harsh, maybe the problem isn't the truth." The staffer nodded like he understood, even though he clearly didn't, and scurried away before she could torch him too. Karoline's team switched strategies. They called a medic over. They called a lawyer over. Someone even suggested calling a makeup artist to freshen her up, as if a little powder and lipstick could erase the live broadcast body slam she had just suffered. They drafted an official statement blaming unseasonably warm studio lights for Karoline's collapse. Another aide suggested spinning it into a sympathy card, paint Karoline as a victim of the toxic environment Democrats created. Jasmine, hearing this, snorted so loudly a producer flinched and almost dropped his headset. Victim? Karoline? After years of parroting lies, spreading fear, and kissing the ring of a man who would throw her under a bus faster than he dodges taxes? No. Tonight, Karoline wasn't a victim. She was a lesson. The backstage hallway, once bustling with fake smiles and nervous handshakes, was now split in two. One side buzzing around Karoline, trying to duct tape her reputation back together. The other side, Jasmine's side, standing tall, steady, laughing quietly among themselves because they knew. They knew. No spin machine in the world could hide the truth anymore. Karoline collapsed not because of dehydration, heat, or stress. She collapsed because when the lies got too heavy, her body decided to give up the charade before her mouth ever would. And the American people? They were already making up their minds faster than any press release could hope to catch. Jasmine adjusted her blazer, checked her phone once, and headed toward the studio exit like a champion after the final bell. Not rushed, not shaken, just satisfied. She didn't need to stick around for the damage control meeting. She was the damage. And Karoline? She was just the wreckage left behind. By the time Karoline's team finally shoved her out the back door and into a waiting black SUV, the country was already wide awake and laughing. Twitter wasn't just on fire, it was a five-alarm blaze. Clips of Karoline's slow-motion collapse flooded every social platform before the first apology statement even hit her official page. Some genius slowed the video down to half speed and added sad violin music. Another edited Jasmine in sunglasses, sipping tea, while Karoline slid under the table like a broken toy. The hashtag #KarolineKO was trending by breakfast. Cable news anchors, those same ones who usually treated Karoline's talking points like they were gospel, suddenly grew brave overnight. Some said she struggled to withstand the pressure of real questions. Others weren't so gentle, calling it the political version of fainting at a spelling bee. And the right-wing echo chamber? They scrambled harder than a diner cook on Sunday morning. Fox News tried spinning the story into a cautionary tale about leftist aggression, painting Jasmine Crockett as some sort of debate room bully. They even wheeled out a few low-rent pundits to call Jasmine's truth bombs unfair tactics, which was hilarious, considering these were the same people who spent years cheering when Trump verbally bulldozed every woman, veteran, immigrant, and disabled person in sight. The double standards were louder than a fire alarm, and Jasmine's fans didn't miss a beat. By noon, shirts were being sold online that read, "Stay standing like Jasmine. Truth hurts. Ask Karoline." Collapsed over facts tour 2025. TikTok was even worse. Teens made skits reenacting Karoline's meltdown, some throwing themselves across beds, others fainting dramatically in grocery store aisles, with captions like, "When Jasmine Crockett tells you the truth and your brain can't process it." Even celebrities got in on the mess. One late-night host joked, "Karoline Leavitt fainted faster than Trump's promises to pay his lawyers." The crowd roared. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett barely needed to say a word. Her team issued a short, professional statement wishing Karoline a speedy recovery, which was a diplomatic way of saying, "Bless your heart," and everyone knew it. But Jasmine herself? She kept it cool. Posted one photo. Black blazer. Crossed arms. No caption needed. It broke 1 million likes in hours. Karoline's side tried everything to plug the bleeding. They rolled out a parade of excuses. Allergies, heat stroke, anxiety triggered by an aggressive tone. Each excuse only made things worse. Because Americans might put up with a lot of nonsense, but they know the smell of fear when it wafts through their screens. Republican talking heads tiptoed around the disaster, pretending it hadn't been that bad, while the smart ones started quietly unfollowing her on social media. The cowards smelled a sinking ship from a mile away. And Donald Trump? The man Karoline had built her brand around defending? Not a single tweet. Not a single public word of support. By the next afternoon, insider reports leaked that Trump's camp had privately said Karoline's performance was embarrassing and made us look weak. Which was funny, considering Trump's own legal team was getting body slammed by courts across the country at the same time. But facts never mattered much to that crowd. What mattered was survival. And Karoline was now radioactive. Political commentators, the serious ones, not the paid clowns, were already writing her off. "You can't lead a movement if you pass out at the first real challenge," one columnist said flatly on a Sunday morning panel. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett was getting invites she didn't even ask for. Talk shows, podcasts, speaking gigs. Everywhere people wanted to hear from the woman who stood her ground while Karoline folded like a cheap lawn chair. And not just because Jasmine was quick-witted, not just because she delivered truth without apology, but because in a sea of fake outrage, fake toughness, and fake loyalty, she reminded people what real strength actually looks like. Quiet, calm, unshakable. By Monday morning, a new meme summed it all up best. A side-by-side photo of Jasmine and Karoline. One standing tall, one slumped over, and the caption read, "Built different." Nobody needed an explanation. The whole country understood. And somewhere in a dark corner of her PR office, Karoline Leavitt probably understood too. Finally, that no amount of spin, slogans, or empty pledges to Donald Trump was ever going to glue her shattered image back together again. The fall wasn't just physical. It was political, and it was permanent. When the dust settled, it wasn't even a contest. One side stood stronger, louder, clearer than ever, and the other collapsed under the very weight of the lies they had spent years defending. Jasmine Crockett didn't have to scream, threaten, or fake loyalty to a man who wouldn't return it. She stood on truth and let everyone else crumble, trying to carry nonsense dressed up as patriotism. Karoline Leavitt's fall wasn't just about one bad night. It was a public reminder that building your whole brand around blind loyalty to a grifter leaves you with nothing when the smoke clears. No applause, no dignity, not even a thank you. And isn't that the sad, funny thing? The people Karoline tried to impress didn't even stick around to catch her when she fell. But Jasmine stood on her own 2 feet, walked out of that studio taller than she came in, and left a footprint so deep, even Karoline's spin team couldn't fill it in. Now let me ask you, if you felt the heat of this story, if you felt even a tiny bit of pride seeing truth beat foolishness in real time, then what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, drop a comment, and tell me where you're watching from, because I know people all over the world saw this train wreck unfold. I want to hear from you. And listen, if you're hesitating to subscribe right now, it's probably because deep down, you're still deciding whether you're team truth or team excuses. If you're with Jasmine, if you believe in standing strong, even when the clowns are throwing pies, then don't just watch, stand with us. Subscribe. Be counted, because silence is what Karoline counted on. And look where it got her. This is where the real ones gather. If you're just here to spectate, maybe you're not ready yet. But if you're tired of seeing cowardice passed off as leadership, if you're tired of seeing fake strength crumble under real pressure, then this is your home. Like the video, comment below. Share it with someone who still thinks loyalty to a con man is strength. Let them see what real strength looks like. And don't forget, drop where you're watching from in the comments. I want to see how far the truth traveled tonight. This was more than a debate. This was a reckoning, and we were lucky enough to witness it. Stay loud, stay proud, stay standing like Jasmine.